Alright, Penance brand champion build overview. Usually I start these videos by like doing a map or something and kind of showing off the character in action a bit, but this character in particular I've actually uploaded like probably 5 or more different gameplay videos of like bossing, some Valdo's maps. I retooled the character pretty heavily and did a no-hit Sanctum. There's a lot of videos already with gameplay from this character, so I'm just going to kind of jump straight into the build and the setup and how I went about what I did for my take on Penance brand of Dissipation. That is the new OP boss killing massive DPS gem. And yeah, I picked champion partly because I wanted to do something that people at the time hadn't really been doing much of with the new Penance brand yet, and partly because I knew that champion was a tried and true uber boss killing setup, specifically when centered around Eternal Damnation, which is a really good setup for non-max res elemental defense scaling. And then we comboed it with Lore Weave, which you don't have to combo Eternal Damnation with Lore Weave, but Lore Weave obviously goes well. This has -5 max, and then if you're not getting a bunch of max res anywhere else, Lore Weave is essentially giving you +8 max res. But the main thing about Lore Weave and why I really like it is they're relatively easy to get, so you can get like corrupted ones. You can see this one, for example. I have a Lore Weave with +1 socketed gems, and since we're using Empower, it's +2 socketed gems pretty much for our main skill. But so we have that combo, and then the other main reason that I wanted Eternal Damnation over something like, say, Fourth Vow is Fourth Vow usually needs a Timeless Jewel of the Glorious Vanity variant. I wanted to use Militant Faith. I'll get into that when I go over the passive tree. The Fourth Vow is kind of out, and then that just leaves this. So I'm going to go over the gear, go over the gems, and then the passive tree, and other small bits in between. But yeah, so like I just showed, the Eternal Damnation Amulet's like kind of the centerpiece of the defense. Extra elemental damage reduction equal to half your Chaos res, and with Lore Weave, our max res is 78. That means we are getting 39% reduced elemental damage taken. And unlike things like scaling max res, which can be countered by enemies having penetration on their abilities, which a lot of the Uber Boss stuff does have, this one's just consistent, which is really nice. Then we've got the Lore Weave, gives us the 78 max res. Gives okay stats, like the attributes on it is kind of useful. The elemental damage is kind of useful. But overall, it's mostly just for that max res and for the fact that it's an easy item to get and to try to get corrupted for some implicits. As far as other uniques go, I'm using Devouring Diadem, just so that I don't have to path to Eldritch Battery on the tree. You could take a path over this way, but it's a lot of points. There was also temporarily I was looking around at a setup where instead of doing most of the stuff over here on the Templar side, I would go up this side through Shadow. But neither of them looked that good by comparison, so Devouring Diadem is just really powerful option there. And then it also does have the plus socketed gems and the reservation efficiency, which does help a lot on Champion to get those extra bits of auras in, since we are scaling aura effect and using auras quite heavily. And then the other unique item is the Ralakesh Impatience Boots, which got changed this league to, instead of actually giving you any charges or anything like that, you just count as having max charges, which has in a lot of cases it works the same as it used to, except you don't need to be standing still ever, and also it has some new benefits, like the Timeless Jewel that I'm using prevents me from gaining frenzy charges because I would gain power charges instead, but I still get to count as though I have all the frenzies. So it's a really good overall in general item. And it was expensive at the start of the league, but it's actually gotten quite cheap, I think, thanks to all the magic finding, which is nice. Those are uniques. Rare items, we'll start with the weapon. It's just a classic +2 Fizz Scepter. I started with a Fractured base. I didn't necessarily need or plan to have an elemental penetration scepter base. It was just what was available with a good spell damage fracture. I think the 6% pen versus a 40% elemental damage implicit are They're very, very close. They're roughly the same in terms of value, so it's kind of just whatever you can get, like, ideally with a fracture. Fractured spell damage just makes the crafting a lot easier. I have a video that goes over every single rare that this character's using in terms of, like, how to craft it all. So if you want to see all that in more detail, you can check it out. But basically, +2 spell damage, get some cast speed, and get double damage. And you'll see we have quite a bit of double damage scaling here. Because the shield, in addition to also having a ton of spell damage, has double damage and, again, double damage while focused. So when we pop our focus, we're getting a total of like 36% chance to do double damage, which is a big damage boost. And then also from our gloves, we're gaining some extra cast speed during that same time. And other than that, the gloves are filling out a lot of our dexterity need, because without a couple big dexterity rolls on gear, we are nowhere near the dexterity we needed. And then it's got suppression and just some life, basically. The belt is just life and resists for the most part. That randomly has like a flask life recovery rate. We don't really care about that, it's just there. But basically just a big life and big res belt. I've been playing more recently with a Mageblood on, but that was just because I have one and I was doing stuff like a lot of Sanctum farming, and like some of the Valdos maps, it's actually pretty nice to have permanent flask up on. But for all the Uber bossing that I did this league, which was like about 200-ish probably Uber bosses between like Maven, Cortex, and Awakener were the three that I farmed a bunch of. I didn't do a single one of those with Mageblood on. Very unnecessary for the bossing. It's more for like speed than anything else really. But yeah, so belt's just got the res. Rings are both cast speed with some chaos res on them. And then this one has dexterity and the other one has some all res. And we have unveiled life prefixes, and then finish them off with Crusader slams. This one actually hit really nicely. It's got life on hit. This one hit lightning damage per power charge, which we do count as having power charges from the boots, but overall that mod doesn't really do very much for us, to be honest. And then our jewel in the belt is just like a basic life and cast speed, whatever, kind of abyss jewel. So that's a gear. Inside the gear, we've got our auras in the helmet. Determ, Haste, Grace. The Grace, I can actually swap out a lot of the time if I'm doing something like a specific boss, like Maven or Awakener don't really have attack skills. So the evasion isn't really needed. I can swap in Zealotry, which is why I have White Socket here, just for even more damage, which is really nice. And even then, I have actually some extra ones. So I think when I was doing my Sanctum no-hit run, I went like full glass cannon. I even took the Determination out and put in Hatred, I think. Yeah, I put in Hatred for even more damage. But so it's like nice to have some flexibility. White socket, at least one white socket on the helmet. And the shield, we got just our Flame Dash and our 2 curses. Weapons got the Divine Blessing for Wrath. And then in our main 6 link, we have the Penance brand of Dissipation. With Fizz to Lightning, you can get Lightning conversion by like stacking it on gloves or maybe a mastery or some other ways, but I found it was just good enough and easy enough and didn't have to go through tons of hassle for very little gains. It's totally fine to just run Fizz to Lightning. Faster casting, which is another gem that's like, this isn't actually that good in terms of you just look on POB and see how much DPS you're gaining. It's not that high, but it makes you ramp faster, and it makes you cast your brands faster, which are both just like really good quality of life type stuff. So definitely like having that one in still. And we've got Lightning Pen, Concentrated Effect, and Empower, which are just like the big damage boosters. The gloves, we got our basic shield charge, faster attacks, and then the cast and damage taken Molten Shell. And in the boots, we've got our Purity of Elements to round out our auras, and then our free Defiance banner because champion gets to run a banner for free. And the one kind of innovation, interesting thing, which is a Stormblast Mine with Minefield. Thanks to being a champion that has a lot of aura effect on the tree, that's kind of what our tree is. It's just jumping around to some aura stuff, and then champion having its aura stuff. It works out quite nicely where a Stormblast Mine, you can run a level 1 gem that reserves very little, almost no mana. They're 1 mana per mine. And they give increased damage taken to enemies near it. So I'm not detonating them, you just throw them to debuff. And what made it really crazy this league in particular is there's a charm mod, which I actually have on a charm. One of these, yeah. Increased effective auras from mines. And it's a very high amount. Like this has 35% increased effective auras from mines. And then I have a jewel, that which was taken, which just has charm mods. This one has a full 50% increased effective auras from mines. So we end up getting the baseline from the mines. I don't remember the exact number, but maybe, I think it's like 10% increased damage taken per mine. So anytime I throw a set of mines, that's 50% increased damage taken. That's another 50, that's another 50, and you've hit the cap of 150. And it's just like a huge damage boost. And since Penance brand is a brand skill, you have a lot of downtime bossing because you kind of just put your brands up and then you're done. You have plenty of time to throw the mines out and get huge damage boosts, which works really, really nicely to just, in combination with the amount of stupid damage Penance brand already does, you just melt bosses extremely fast. But yeah, to the passive tree. Champion, Fortify, Auras. I opted for Conqueror over the Adrenaline node. Adrenaline is also good, like it's kind of a preference thing. I figured since we have, again, really high uptime on our damage, Penance brand is always hitting no matter what we're doing. We're pretty much always having this active, the 10% reduced damage taken if you've taunted enemies recently, which is the only line I care about on this. Taunt on hit, whatever, we don't care about actually having taunt. It's just that 10% reduced damage taken is going to consistently make you take less damage. Whereas Adrenaline, you know, if you get below 50, it heals you up is really good too. But maybe in a situation where like you go below 50 and then again before the adrenaline fades something happens, you know, it's got that cooldown. Whereas this one's just always going to be up. That's why I opted in for it, but you can pick either one. They're both really good. And then other than that, I basically path for life nodes, I path for aura nodes. I grab a cluster jewel down here. I'll come back to the Scion thing because this is kind of the one main other piece. But otherwise, again, it's just life stuff. Iron Will is actually just like a free 1 point for a lot of damage. More aura stuff. We do grab Rune Binder. It makes your Penance brands ramp faster. So basically, Penance brand has a cap of 20 energy stacks. But if you have 2 brands, they share the cap. So if they both attached at the same time, they would both get to 10 stacks instead of having one at 20. Having 2 at 10 stacks ends up working out to slightly higher DPS than 1 at 20. But more importantly, you ramp up twice as fast because you only have to get to 10 stacks, which I really like. And then I've got the 2 additional brands on this mastery so that I'm not running around with just a 3 brand cap. Just for some quality of life. We have LA Overload, we are non-crit. Then we have another cluster jewel. And then one thing I have that is very not necessary, but a still very powerful min-max thing. I did a lot of Uber boss farming. Again, without this at all. Didn't have it for a lot of bosses that I killed. But it's the CI Impossible Escape, which lets us pick up Dual Curse and another Aura Wheel for even more Aura effect. And since we're running a whole bunch of auras, it's just a very strong combination. But this part in the middle is like the main thing that made me, again, want to run the Eternal Damnation setup over something like a 4th Vow. Is the combination of Militant Faith with Unnatural Instinct. So Unnatural Instinct allocates all these small nodes that I haven't actually touched. They don't really do very much. Most of them, at least. Like cast speed's good, AoE's good. Life regen's decent. Like, so these curse ones otherwise aren't really doing anything for us. But now, because we have this overlap, all of these are giving us devotion. And since our Militant Faith has 2 good stats for the per 10 devotion, with area damage and brand damage, our character has a total of 240 devotion, which turns into just like insane value for the jewel socket. In addition to, again, a natural instinct already being pretty good on its own because of the fizz damage and the cast speed and the AoE. And then on top of that, we can get a keystone out of the Militant Faith which gives us 3% more damage per power charge, but we gain powers instead of frenzies, which would normally be bad, but again, the combo with the boots means we are still getting the frenzies, and we're getting counted as having the power charges, so we get this 9% more spell damage because we count as having 3 power charges, and we get the full benefit of having 3 frenzies, which is really good, really strong. And then we have a little bit of suppression over here to finish out our capped suppression, which you may have noticed there's not really suppression on the gear. There's some on the gloves. We've got the implicit and the roll, and other than that, there's nothing. So what's happening there is we are taking full advantage of charms. Every charm here has suppression, 15%, 14%, 10%. And also the unique jewel has another 15% as well. Taking full advantage of that just so that we could get our suppression without having to sacrifice in other places, other than just a few points there. But it works out really well. And yeah, that covers the tree. We covered the gear. We covered the gems. I think that's that. Like I said, I did some gaming with Mageblood. I'm not going to really focus on it. The only thing I changed when I put Mageblood on, I have to put a ring on to fix some resists because we're losing a little bit here. To balance out the resist, we need to do a little bit of a swap. And then most of the time I've been playing with a Mageblood, I put a quartz flask on. Gives 19 suppression, so I can unspec these nodes and just spec it into like more HP, because you can see I lost a ton of HP putting the Mageblood on. The non-Mageblood setup by comparison has like 700 more HP. But yeah, so you don't have to change much, and it's not needed for the build, but if you have one, you know, it's pretty straightforward. It's pretty plug and play for the most part. Very little needs to be changed overall, other than just getting flasks ready. And that's the build. I guess one other thing Pantheon people always ask about: Solaris Growth or Solaris Ralakesh. I pick Solaris almost any time if a build doesn't need Brine King for either stun or freeze, which we're running Purity of Elements, so we're already ailment immune, and Champion gets stun immunity, so don't need Brine King. I almost always go to Solaris as the next option, and Ralakesh I run on, I feel like, just about every character for years now. Just always my go-tos. Yeah, that's a build. Very good at bossing. 100% would recommend if you want like just a extremely powerful, easy time. Maybe first time trying out like farming Ubers. Hardcore or softcore. Super good at it. And then like when I had the Mageblood set up on, I was doing a lot of Sanctum farming with the Mageblood specifically because you can run really fast thanks to Mageblood things. Again, Penance Brand just having lots of damage means it's really good at doing Sanctum, so we could zoom around. That was also really good. And even going a step further and switching a lot of gear around, I had a bunch of stuff in here that turned it into a glass cannon for a Sanctum no-hit run. Even though Penance Brand isn't like the optimal ideal skill for that, it also went really well. It's kind of everything I've tooled the character for, other than like map clear. I don't care about map clear. If you want something that's like really good at mapping, this is not your build. You can do stuff with Penance with explosion effects like obliteration or Asenath, whatever. You can make stuff that clears fine. But if you're looking for something that's like you love clear speed builds, this ain't it. This ain't it. But for the other stuff that I mentioned, it's been extremely good at. And yeah, that's all I got. I will link the POBs. And I say POBs because I'll have my regular POB and at least the no-hit Sanctum run that I did. I have a POB saved for that I can share as well. Probably won't link anything related to Mageblood because, again, it swaps like 3 things. And if you have a Mageblood, hopefully you can just figure that part out. Yeah. Great build. Ton of fun. Farmed me a lot of currency this league, and I enjoyed playing it a lot. Thanks for watching. See ya.